Peter Navarro insists that India's keyboard minions are hijacking excess community notes. What he really means is that fact-checkers dared to puncture his inflated ego. For a man who spent years masquerading as Trump's trade oracle, it's ironic he now trembles at the sight of digital volunteers armed with evidence. His Maharaja of Tariffs jibe says less about Indian trade policy and more about Navarro's inability to debate without resorting to cheap oriental stereotypes. He claims India's sky-high tariffs cost US jobs and that Indian oil purchases bankroll Putin. This is the same Navarro who cheered when Trump waged tariff wars against allies, crippling American farmers and manufacturers. The inconvenient truth is that India buys Russian oil for energy security, just as Europe did for decades before 2022. If buying crude equals funding war, then perhaps Navarro should first point fingers at Germany and Italy, not Delhi. Navarro crows about import numbers, an 8-fold jump in India-Russia trade since 2021. But context is everything. India redirected supply chains after Western sanctions upended global markets. Exactly what Washington encouraged New Delhi to do in 2022 to stabilize prices. Navarro's selective outrage ignores the fact that India's imports kept global energy costs down, cushioning not just Indian households but also inflation hit American consumers. Without India's buying power, oil would have skyrocketed, punishing Navarro's beloved American people. Navarro then parades the US trade deficit with India as if it were a revelation. Navarro, of all people, should know that deficits in a globalized economy don't automatically translate into job losses. By his logic, America should cut off trade with the entire world. US firms profit massively from Indian markets, from Apple iPhones to Boeing aircraft, and American tech giants practically run on Indian IT talent. If there is a deficit, it is not a loss. It is the price of integration into a growing market of 1.4 billion consumers. Navarro dismisses Indian students as cheap labor flooding US universities. This is perhaps his most insulting flourish. Indian students pay billions in tuition fees, often at full international rates, and fuel research, innovation, and local economies. They are not a drain, but a subsidy to America's higher education system. The idea that an MIT-trained Indian engineer undercuts a US graduate is laughable, unless Navarro believes mediocrity deserves protectionist handouts. Navarro triumphantly declares that the US doesn't need unfair trade with India. Wrong again. America's Indo-Pacific strategy, its semiconductor ambitions, its supply chain resilience, all of it hinges on cooperation with India. From defense partnerships to space exploration, Washington needs India more than Navarro can digest. The real question is whether Navarro understands economics at all, or if he simply prefers shouting protectionism into the void. Finally, Navarro claims the road to peace in Ukraine runs through New Delhi. This is the ultimate punchline. The man who spent years justifying Trump's embrace of Putin now pretends to be the oracle of peace and somehow decides India must carry the burden. Peace in Ukraine runs through Moscow, Washington, Brussels, and Kyiv, not through the diesel barrels unloaded in Gujarat. If Navarro truly cared about peace, he would stop using Ukraine as a stick to beat India with and perhaps ask why his own administration bent over backwards for autocrats while insulting allies. And here lies the ultimate irony. While Peter Navarro foams at the mouth, his own boss is busy calling Narendra Modi a very good friend and promising smooth negotiations. Navarro's rants don't just sound petty, they actively undercut Trump's diplomacy, making him look like the sideshow clown heckling from the cheap seats while the main act shakes hands on stage. If trade policy were judged by tantrums, Navarro would be a Nobel laureate. Sadly for him, the world deals in facts, not fits of rage. Bureau Report, India Today Global.